Where are we going to eat?
That's a good question. Maybe I'll get some diamond slice.
What place?
Diamond slice.
Diamond Slice. Is that in Fruitvale or something?
Yeah. It's right on Fruitvale and MacArthur, basically, where that old McDonald's used to be.
Oh, what? So that used to be a vegan place, and it's a new restaurant now.
Oh, so were you talking about Veg Hub?
Yeah.
Yeah, that place actually is closed, but no, it's not in that store. It's
Oh.
right now.
Oh, okay. I'm losing touch. I haven't been living in Oakland for almost a year, about a year. So now I'm like, what's new out there?
Yeah. You've been out the way for a little bit, which is all good. I'm not happy with all the changes, but some things are cool. Like Diamond Slice is cool because it's super good. It's healthy. It's Black and Latino owned, and yeah, they show a lot of love. I go there pretty often, and they all go brother up.
But when I'm out there, I'm gonna try Diamond Slice. So I'm gonna put that on my list.
Are you vegan?
No, but I like eating vegetables, so I'm not really like strict on, except for just like the dietary laws in the Bible. But yeah, I'm open to vegan, plant-based food.
Oh, okay, because it's vegetarian, but they have vegan. So, yeah. So of course, they have the regular with cheese on it. They always have a different flavor every day, and you could always ask for vegan cheese, which is like cashew cheese. That's hella good.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Welcome, y'all. We got Joyous in the building. Cal.
Hi, everyone.
Okay,
Yo.
Yo. Let's give it a couple more minutes and let some more people roll in. Expecting Xavier to be here soon. Nathaniel, what's happening? Welcome. Couple more minutes, y'all. Appreciate y'all coming through. All right, y'all. So yeah, we're gonna start. The pages we're reading today on Collective Courage on this March 30th, Wednesday, 2022. The pages we're gonna read from Collective Courage are 158 to 162. And I'm gonna start with some reading from Jackson Rising. So again, continuing people's assemblies and what they are, what are the benefits of them, what are some of the procedures of creating some. So we went through the different events I guess you could say procedures that are good to put in place, and just to review them real quick. When you're creating a people's assembly, you want to have these elements a part of it. And group norms and code of conduct. So how you guys appreciate, talk to each other, solve conflicts, express opinions. There's a way to do those things to be respectful of each other's representation, identities, and belief systems, and economic placement. All of these different things that make us who we are, the different intersections of who we are, make us, triggered by certain things or apathetic to certain things. So having a way of dealing with each other is good. Having a clear agenda. What is the purpose of the meeting? What is the focus of the month, the year? What is the plan or strategy? 3, clear goals and objectives. Kind of the same mindset, right? Like, what is the focus? What are we aiming for? Clear and concise questions. So with every goal or every new project, there are going to be assumptions being made that you have to be aware of in order to not place yourself in a position of, where you want to understand what you're taking for granted, because you never know what results you may get. So you always have to reassess what assumptions you're taking. So if you've said that, okay, my market or my neighborhood or my ideal customer is this, you might be making an assumption. So you have to check that against what data you're getting. Okay. Then you have strong and even-handed facilitation. So how do you make decisions in your collective? What's the process, democratic process? What's the different procedures if one layer doesn't happen? If the administrative team is not able to handle the business, or come to a decision, then how does it go to the masses, or excuse me, the mass group, in a democratic process? What are the different ways? Is it majority wins? Is it, a certain minimum of votes have to be one side in order for it to win? What is the goal in terms of how we deal with decision making? Detailed note taking, that's important. We always have note takers in most of our meetings and repair nations, because there's so much information, sometimes different perspectives, different updates, that we got to just keep track of it all. And then next steps and follow-up procedures. So after you have done your meeting and created an agenda, like, how do you move in a way that you are also staying focused on the next goal as well and not getting stagnant? All right. And so I also wanted to read some of the real world examples. So we talked about Venezuela and Panama yesterday. Today, I want to continue to read on another example of different people's assembly. So during revolutionary periods, an assembly can effectively become the government state and assume control over the basic processes and mechanisms of production. There have been few experiences or examples of assemblies commanding this much power since the 1980s in places like Haiti, Philippines, Nicaragua, Burkina Faso, and Grenada. The recent experiences that come closest are Egypt in winter 2011 and summer 2013, and Nepal during stretches between 2003 and 2006. Right. So I know that in Egypt, during the early 20 teens, we had the uprising, and that was a a people's assembly, one that is massive and dealt with an acute situation of overthrowing a government that wasn't in favor of the multitudes of people that made up the population. So they responded in a way that was apparent to everyone around the world. So something to think about, again, when we all can come into consensus and say, hey, we don't like this, and we say, hey, we're not going to take this. As soon as we do that in unison, it spells trouble for those in power because we outnumber them. And so I know it's harder. It's easier said than done, but it is possible. And we have these examples to inspire us to not forget. So let's bring it back to collective courage. Who we got in here? Okay. Z, what's up with it? Welcome. Okay. So 158 in collective courage. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
I'm on my phone. Okay, cool. All right, so 158, collective courage. In his reply to Wilson's letter, Randolph was full of encouragement and acknowledged her accomplishments. I hope that you are not discouraged about the outcome of your splendid efforts in behalf of the development of a cooperative and credit union for the auxiliary. These unions are economic agencies that require a tremendous amount of time and work to set up and maintain. You can feel that your efforts have been fruitful because you have planted the seed of cooperation among women. This seed is bound to grow and eventually flower. So that reminds me of, Jackson Rising talking about their youth leadership program. That reminds me of the Black Panthers and their free breakfast program. The influence that you have on the youth can send waves beyond you. It can send waves beyond your lifetime or your organization, or can help sustain your organization for generations. Because when you are able to plant seeds of critical thinking and humanism and appreciation for the earth, the youth tend to take things and multiply in the positive or negative. And they learn by watching more so than listening. And so we can be those examples, and the more intentional we are about those examples, the better. So I feel like what they're saying, even though Wilson is talking about her involvement, Randolph is talking about Wilson's involvement with women. It's the work that she put in and sacrifice that can send waves. And then those women are becoming self-sufficient. And then those women, I'm sure, have influence over their own families and youth. So, your boldness and consistency and persistence can send waves. And that's what Helena Wilson did. She sent waves through her communities, through her constant and consistent work to galvanize the women in her communities to work together. Others were also optimistic about the efforts and accomplishments of the co-op and about Wilson's consumer cooperation program. Thornton described the establishment of the cooperatives as in keeping with the auxiliary program of organization, legislation, and cooperation. She contended that it is significant that this Brotherhood Consumer Cooperative Store in Chicago is the first and only effort of its kind sponsored by Women's Auxiliary within the labor movement, a movement of which we are proud of and feel sure that all auxiliaries will wish to follow. The Brotherhood Co-op was not the only cooperative project of which Wilson and the Ladies Auxiliary were a part. In 1947, several members of the Ladies Auxiliary attended a co-op labor conference in Chicago, sponsored by the Council of Cooperative Development. In a letter to Randolph in July 1947, C.J. McClanahan, the education director of National Cooperatives, Inc., mentioned that he had met several women from the Ladies Auxiliary at the Co-op and Labor Institute at the University of Wisconsin, where he discussed their interest in the development of a cooperative program. He also mentioned that Letitia Murray had done good work in education among the auxiliaries. Randolph replied, "Our Ladies Auxiliary is making headway in the development of an educational program in consumer cooperation. It is my hope that the auxiliary will keep in contact with the cooperative movement which you represent, so that it will benefit from the broad stream of knowledge and inspiration that your movement affords. It is clear that the Ladies Auxiliary have Randolph's full support in pursuing a cooperative program. So it seems like the waves that the Ladies Auxiliary was making, had a certain influence. Let's keep going. 1 year later, in 1948, in July 1948, McClanahan wrote to Helena Wilson about the project to develop a type of cooperative well fitted to fit the needs of organized labor today. He reported that national cooperatives, as well as was well on the way to developing a demonstration project, but needed more funding. In addition to asking the Ladies Auxiliary for funds, whether through membership fees or donations, McClanahan discussed the importance of the auxiliaries' input in helping to shape the course of a total cooperative program for the labor communities, developing a strong cooperative that will meet the needs of union members. This also suggests that the larger cooperative movement understood the importance of enlisting support, input, and counsel from African-American women in the labor movement. We can infer from this that the BSCP's Ladies Auxiliary was regarded highly by both the labor movement and the cooperative movement. In the BSCP files at the Library of Congress, there is a proposed agenda for a similar co-op labor conference in Chicago called by the Council of Cooperative Development dated December 9th, but not specifying the year. This conference presumably took place before the one mentioned in McClanahan's July 1947 letter to Randolph because it gives Chicago rather than Madison as the location. It is possible that the proposed agenda was a planning document for the Wisconsin conference and that this conference ended up taking place in Madison, but it is more likely these were two separate conferences. Perhaps the undated agenda referred to McClanahan's July 1948 letter to Wilson. It included a discussion of community cooperatives and their activities, cooperatives as labor community-based ownership of productive families, and challenges to cooperative development. Wilson added a note in her own hand at the bottom of the proposed agenda for the Co-op Labor Conference in Chicago, presumably addressed to Randolph. Her note says that she thought that the reader would be interested in this new development between labor and the co-op movement, and explains that she was the only woman who attended the meeting. She was placed on the bylaws committee charged with drawing up the articles of consolidation between labor and the cooperatives in the cooperative movement, but suggested that her International Ladies Auxiliary could not afford the $1,000 membership fee. Wilson's note also mentions other labor union representatives in attendance. Again, these documents suggest that at least in co-op circles in the Midwest and among these seeking relationship with labor, the Black women of the Ladies Auxiliary were involved and that their leadership was important. Finally, in 1952, Wilson was instrumental in the establishment of the Cooperative Union Eye Care Center, of which the Chicago chapter of the Ladies Auxiliary was a charter member. The special letter in which Wilson delineated the auxiliary's relationship to the eye care co-op, as well as the mention of Wilson's role in the founding of that co-op in her biographical sketch of 1956, confirms that after the demise of the Brotherhood Consumer Cooperative Store, Wilson did not actually withdraw from all of her cooperative projects or relinquish her dreams of cooperative development between African Americans and organized labor. This more than 20-year history of cooperative education and development promoted and sponsored by the BSCP and its Ladies Auxiliary constitutes another important chapter in the African American co-op movement in the United States and Canada. It is also a story of connections between the Black labor movement and the Black cooperative movement, the Black and white labor movements, and the Black women's labor movement, and the white labor and cooperative movements. While A. Philip Randolph is quite well known, Helena Wilson is virtually unknown, nor have Randolph and Wilson have been remembered for their support for consumer cooperation. Nevertheless, together they had tremendous influence on the U.S. cooperative movement, and Wilson in particular was instrumental in keeping the idea of consumer cooperation alive and in practice in the Black community for more than 20 years, right? So sometimes you don't even get the appreciation for what you influence and what you do until years down the line, right? Like we are able to read about this and digest, you know, what was being said and in the conversations of that time, and you know how people who were being recognized for their work saw the importance of this cooperative work and were giving their own recognition to Helena Wilson, and A. Philip Randolph had probably gotten more recognition in some ways than even Helena Wilson, you know, with him being a part of the March on Washington with Martin Luther King Jr. So, or at least inspiring that idea. So these are the things that we have to recognize, that, you know, we have to continue to break these status quos of not giving recognition to our women, and shine the light on them, and you know, affirm them, because they bring a lot of value to our communities, and it is only lifting the whole when we make sure that we do that. Yes, and so yeah, shout out to Helena Wilson for all of her work. So let's keep going. We got a few more pages to go. All right. Women of color in craft and worker cooperatives. In the late 20th century and early 21st centuries, women of color, particularly immigrant women in the United States, have used cooperative economic development strategies to create good jobs in industries known for low-paying contingent work, and to own their own companies. Below are several examples of craft or worker cooperatives owned by Black women and other women of color. The Freedom Quilting Bee. The Freedom Quilting Bee was established in 1967 in Alberta, Alabama, to help sharecropping families earn independent income. Some of the women in Alberta and Gee's Bend, Alabama, came together to produce and sell quilts. In a few years, they had made enough money to buy land and build a sewing factory. They also provided daycare and after-school services for members, children, and others. The cooperative was a founding member of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and is an example of women's leadership and control over their own work conditions, and of community solidarity in terms of the ways in which this cooperative supported and helped its community. This handicraft cooperative was founded by women in sharecropping families who needed to increase and stabilize their meager incomes. The women began selling quilts to supplement their families' farm incomes. The seed money for the cooperative came from an initial sale of 100 quilts sold for them in New York by an Episcopalian minister named Francis Walters, who wanted to support the effort. Co-founder Estelle Witherspoon was Freedom Quilting Bee's first president. Witherspoon officially retired at the age of 75, and Lucy Petway became CEO. In 1968, the cooperative bought 23 acres of land on which to build the sewing plant and increase Black land ownership. It sold 8 lots to families who had been evicted from the homes and land and needed to start over. Economic independence and control over land were particularly important to members of the cooperative because many families lost the land that they had been sharecropping because of their civil rights activities. Some were evicted from their farms for registering to vote, and others were evicted on their return from hearing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak in a nearby town in the mid-1960s. Having the cooperative owned land gave members independence and an alternative source of land to farm. The 23 acres were thus important not only to the co-op's own survival and growth, but also to that of the families and the larger community. I love the Freedom Quilting Bee story because it shows how cooperatives can be pillars to the community economically and culturally, right? So that collaboration of the women inspired someone who wanted to support, and they became a business, and that business was able to support others who were in a tight situation because of their participation in their own liberation. Because when you participate in your own liberation in terms of freeing yourself from economically being married to institutions that don't want to see you succeed, or mentally seeing yourself subservient, freeing yourself from seeing yourself subservient to another race, like, or freeing yourself from um, being afraid of violence for just wanting to have human rights, civil rights. You are threatening your economic stability a lot when you choose these routes of healing, because that level of healing is not in alignment with those who want to see you in a state of stagnicity. And so those landlords who rescinded the the leases of those who stayed on their land, the Black people who wanted to listen to Martin Luther King Jr., or, who wanted to organize their efforts, is wrong. It really is wrong. And we have to recognize that their right to do that was bold. I mean, their decision to do that was bold. And it's amazing that they still chose to do that, even with the consequences that they were facing. But the Freedom Quilting League being there to save them from that consequence is also just, it's so satisfying, because that there's a certain uncertainty, right? Like, I'm sure they were even warned, like, hey, if you go check out that speech, if you go try to organize, if you go try to get better for yourself, you're fired and you're homeless. Now make a move. Now let me see what you're gonna do.
Yeah, that's definitely good. I agree. And isn't that what Wakanda's doing right now? Wakanda trying to
Yes.
find land for.
Yes, and running into some battles with that, right? People who have money right now, big money, are able to, outbid Okanda. So, there's hope, but at the same time, it's the patience. It's a battle of patience, and I would love to get more involved into Okanda, because I believe in that. And yeah, we need more examples of common land ownership, especially of culturally aware and ambitious entrepreneurs who want to see their community do better, like to have a land owned by them and operated by them, and having the autonomy, I think, could spell wonders for the generations to come. How do y'all feel about the Freedom Quilting Bee? Does that inspire y'all at all? Does it inspire any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just think of like having faith when you know something could go wrong, but you just keep fighting for what you believe in, and like something is working out, and it's great that um the Freedom Quilting Bee, they were already, these women was already ready for those people that who wanted to support MLK, Martin Luther King. So it's pretty cool for those, for like cooperatives, and um to already be thinking ahead and have something ready for folks.
That's right. And I think it's also important to have those cooperative safety nets, if you will, for the people that exist beyond the government. Canada, right? They had some people that were protesting, and not in any violent way. I don't remember the exact reason, but Canada basically started blocking accounts and doing things to, you know, thwart their ambitions of getting redress to whatever their problem was, and this is supposed to be like a democratic country, blocking bank accounts, people helping them through Venmo and, some of these crowdfunding apps, blocking their donations. So examples of that is scary because I don't even know the cause, but it doesn't matter because they were not being violent. And from what I understand, it was like workers, truck drivers trying to get equal pay or something like that. So, regardless, if it's not harming anybody, and they want to organize, do that. Like, but because the government saw what they were doing as, anti, whatever their ambitions were, anti profit, in my opinion, they were able to, make that move. And so that can happen anywhere. That can happen in America. And so we have to develop an autonomous network to where the principles of humanism and community are seen as a priority over even nationalism. And that's people might feel divisive about that, but like your patriotism should not infringe upon my human rights and my civil liberties. You know what I'm saying? So even if you disagree with me politically, like I have a right to live and I have a right to access to certain things. And so the beauty of organizing and having an autonomy is strong to me. And I just would love to see that grow. So yeah, that's it, folks. We here at the end of it. Any last words from my people?
Just real quick on the being having these cashless apps and stuff and GoFundMe's that are being set up, which is very convenient. But like you just said, like the government can still access it and block it or shut your account down. So it just kind of makes me think of like what kind of autonomous platform could be for like it outside of those things because we're moving to a cashless society little by little. But yeah, that's just what I was thinking about.
Yeah, and that's a great question to ask. I think technology, we depend on it so much, but the drawback is the person that has the switch has the power to turn it off and on. So truly decentralized. Sorry, y'all, 1 second. Fully decentralized options, require expertise and require money still, so we're finding that even in crypto, you have, decentralized assets, where, it's not necessarily owned by anybody, but it's managed by a company, and that company can still have centralized ability, meaning they don't own the code, right? But they own the middleman. Like you have to get on their website to use the app, right? So everyone is available to use the app, but you have to go through their door to use it. Or it's like everybody can get on the island, but you got to use my bridge, kind of metaphor. And so is the island for everybody then if you can shut the bridge off at any point? You can say, well, I got to get my own boat, right? Well, then that requires money and everybody can't get a boat. And so yes, these are questions that people are asking and trying to find solutions for. Excuse me. And as technology grows, I think we should continue to stay aware of the differences because you have people, these corporations coming out with solutions that they want to come out with. What about solutions that we need? Like, I think we should stay critical and aware because people are innovating and may not always get the funding because it may be in direct opposition to, centralized banks, centralized companies, and what they want to do. So yeah, the technology side of cooperatives and the innovation of that, I'm up for that conversation and would love to have more expert opinions spoken in a public manner to stimulate more thought in that area. Because yeah, we are in a cashless society, and man, it's kind of scary. But also, that means value can be created out of nowhere or created from things that are not just money. I can assign value to me. That's what these coins also represent. I can assign a value to, whatever I want to assign value to, which could be, even art, culturally, art that we create. We can utilize that value for us rather than, it just be pimped by, record labels or publishers or whatever. But it's deeper than I'm really an expert of, and I'm just curious about it. So let's keep talking about it. I appreciate everyone for showing up, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. Same black time, same black channel. All right?
Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.